appropriate to begin my remarks by applauding the women and men who have campaigned for many long years to achieve recognition of what happened in institutions across this country, recognition of the abusive and degrading treatment suffered by women and their children in mother and baby homes, in county homes, in children's homes, in orphanages, in Magdalen laundries and beyond. The idea of punishing a woman for her pregnancy is frankly abhorrent, and yet that's what happened in our country. Generations of unmarried pregnant women faced not only isolation, stigma and cruelty, they faced also the ultimate inhumane sanction of having their babies taken from them. And it's hard to fathom all of this. I personally struggle to understand or grasp such an intensely vindictive act as to take a child from its frightened, vulnerable mother. And yet, this is what happened in thousands of cases. Many women who lived this trauma are still around to tell the tale. Some of them have, very bravely and very publicly. A woman spoke at a gathering in Ross Abbey in Rosscray, County Tipperary, about 2 weeks ago. I had the honour of being in that gathering. She had her baby in that institution. She left without her baby from that institution, and she suspects that her baby is buried somewhere under the ground where we stood, but she can't be sure. Her story is sadly echoed in cases the length and breadth of this country. And now is the moment that we face up to that. It was Catherine Corliss who painstakingly and faithfully discovered the names of the almost 800 infants and children who died at the Bon Secours institution in Tuam. Catherine, and indeed Teresa Killeen Kelly, and their Mother and Baby Committee deserve much credit from all of us. And so too do those campaigners who have worked, who have fought for recognition. It's been a long road, and I want to welcome so many of them here in the public gallery this evening. You are very, very welcome. Tuam was not an isolated case. And our motion this evening makes clear that the investigation into the events at the Bon Secours institution must be replicated in mother and baby homes and other institutions across the state. It's essential, Minister, that this Commission cannot be selective in its approach. It would be a glaring contradiction and a profound injustice to include some survivors and to exclude others. It would be a farce, for instance, to pretend that any investigation of women and children in mother and baby institutions could be carried out without including the Magdalen laundries. The McAleese report did not and could not establish the full story of women and children's experiences in the laundries. It could not and did not establish the relationship, the traffic, the interplay between the laundries and the mother and baby homes. And it is impossible to get to the bottom of the mother and baby home story without understanding and finally and fully confronting what happened in the laundries. It's therefore essential, Minister, that the scope of the inquiry includes the Magdalen laundries, and I would like you and the Government to commit to their inclusion here this evening. It's essential too that institutions so far ignored or set aside by the state are included. Many of these, as it happens, were Protestant in ethos. Institutions like the Avoca House and West Bank orphanages, which were located in County Wicklow, and the Church of Ireland Magdalen Home, based in Dublin. I do welcome the fact that finally the Government has recognised the survivors of the Bethany home. Their inclusion is long overdue. The role of sadness and death from that home in Rathgar in Dublin is engraved on a memorial stone in Mount Jerome Cemetery, where just last April, the forgotten, lost children of Bethany were given the dignity of their names at their final resting place. And that dignity of recognition, of identity, of being named, must be afforded to every infant and child that lies in an unmarked plot or grave. I think survivors at this stage have made it abundantly clear that they desire memorial stones for all of these infants and children. And I think that their wish should be respected and accommodated at the earliest opportunity. Despite protestations to the contrary, the abuse of women and children happened in clear view of society. And we undoubtedly as a society have questions to answer and lessons to learn from our negligence, our cruelty, our fear of authority and our compliance with things that on reflection none of us here would stand over. That such organised, systematic abuse happened with the active involvement of religious and churches is an utter perversion of anything that anyone might reasonably call Christian. And church leaders and religious orders must now step forward and measure up to their responsibilities, to cooperate, to apologise and to make reparations. The state alibi until recently has been that these awful abusive events happened in private institutions and that somehow therefore the state was not and is not accountable or liable for the violation of women's and children's rights. And this, Minister, I'm sure you will agree, is patent nonsense. The fact is that this abuse happened with the clear sanction and connivance of the state, and this, in my view, is the most devastating reality of all. So it's now important that we establish the full facts of what happened behind institutional walls and gates, the full facts of what happened to women and children in these institutions and beyond. We demand an explanation for the infant and child mortality rates, for the vaccine trials. We want answers around the adoption practices, forced, illegal adoptions from these institutions. We want, in other words, the terms of reference of this inquiry to be absolutely comprehensive. And we expect government to honour its commitment to consult with the opposition parties, but above all with the survivors and their advocates. And we won't accept from government any attempt to cherry-pick institutions to be included with others excluded. To victims and survivors, to mothers and their babies, you are grievously wronged by society, by the churches and by the state. You were deserving of and entitled to your human rights and dignity, and there are no excuses, no alibis and nowhere for anyone to hide. You deserve and you must receive a full and wholesome apology. None of you were ever, to use the awful phrase, illegitimate. It was the state, the churches and society which acted illegitimately, that broke every rule, every boundary of decency, of morality and of the rule of law. And the government now has a chance, because of the courage and perseverance of survivors and campaigners, to put things to right. So, Minister, don't throw this chance away. The challenge, you see, is for government to match the fierce dignity and courage of those who have stepped forward to demand justice for mothers and their babies. And this motion is, of course, about the past, but in a very profound way, all of this is about the here and now. It's about us asserting the kind of Ireland in which we live, the manner in which we value our women and children, and the extent to which we are prepared to recognise wrongs and to apologise and own up to them. Time is of the essence. Survivors and victims need recognition now. They need support now. They need redress now. And by way of conclusion, Minister, I'm going to read you this. These are the words of a survivor. And this is what he says. He says, "It would be best to come clean now, This problem is partly due to governments in the past selecting who gets justice and who, in their eyes, does not deserve the truth. The abuse continues until all the homes are included. The issue is not going to go away because the brave souls who survived to testify their experience aren't going away. And I think a wise man, a wise minister and a wise government would heed these words.
Brian Stanley,
Thanks, Oscar.